The former mayor of Oakland, Jerry Brown, has pulled far ahead of his rivals for the job of governor. Carla Marinucci of the San Francisco Chronicle have that story for us tonight. And Paul Rogers with the San Jose Mercury News has the latest in the battle over water. Bob Egelko, also at the Chronicle, on the Healthy San Francisco case before the U.S. Supreme Court. Carla Marinucci, headlines about a race that's still a year away.
Yeah, who would have thought it, Velvet? I mean, look at already a full throttle battle for headlines, for money, and who's the guy sitting in the catbird seat? It's somebody who really isn't even campaigning, Jerry Brown, former two-term governor of California, current state attorney general, 20 points ahead in the polls of Gavin Newsom, the mayor of San Francisco, and ahead of everyone else in the field. You know, Newsom had his moment in the sun this week with former President Clinton coming to the state to endorse him, but he has got a big challenge ahead of him, and so it turns out does the billionaire former head of eBay, Meg Whitman. She's in a dead heat with a guy who's on a shoestring budget, Tom Campbell, while Steve Poizner, the insurance commissioner, is way back in the field. So this is getting very interesting, very fast, and very dirty, I may add.
Those seem like the two main headlines, which are very surprising out of this, which is that this race is Jerry Brown's to lose, and he hasn't even announced his candidacy. He's 20 to 25 points ahead of every single Republican candidate in a matchup. He hasn't done any campaigning. Meg Whitman has spent $19 million.
Absolutely, Paul.
And Jerry Brown is not even in the same universe.
This just shows, I think, the advantage when you're talking about a guy who's been in California politics for 40 years. The name recognition is huge, but he's also got 40 years of history that he's going to have to deal with when those ads start and when a Republican comes up against him. If that's the case, it isn't over yet. I think we'll put.
All right, let's play a wait here. You say he's not campaigning, yet he files a lawsuit a week against somebody.
You got a good point.
He has a headline that Gavin Newsom can't buy.
You know, they're absolutely right.
Because he has the job that allows him to do it.
He's turning out press releases as we speak on everything he's doing to protect the people of California as a state attorney general. Bob, you know this in the legal area. I mean, you get it all the time. This is the way he's running this race. He's not making speeches. He's not doing debates. Newsom has challenged him to 19 debates. Ain't gonna happen.
Well, for a Democrat or one of these declined states who can vote in the Democratic Party, what's the difference between them other than that Jerry's been around the track and Gavin has been around a shorter? Do they differ on anything important that we know about? You know, we got your three strikes. We got the budget. We got marijuana legalization. We got gay marriage.
You've come exactly to the point. You know, and in Gavin Newsom's big challenge, they really don't differ, at least as far as you know, on too many things. Newsom wants to make this about it makes this a change election, a generational thing. There is a 30-year difference between these two guys. That's the biggest difference ever in a governor's race. Whether people will take that into account, I think that's a factor Newsom has got to hope happens. But right now, Jerry Brown has got it all over any of these candidates.
One of the things that leapt out at me at that field poll this week was that 50% of Republican voters have not made up their mind yet. So even though Whitman and Campbell are supposedly tied, that seems wide open. In the Democratic side, only 25% of Democrats say they haven't made up their mind.
Absolutely.
Now, what could trip Jerry Brown up? Although, frankly, at this point, it doesn't seem like
Well, you know, it is a long time. You know, this is a number of months, long time in any political race. One statement, one story can make all the difference in the world, which is why, you know, Dianne Feinstein in that field poll still showed up the strongest candidate. I wouldn't be surprised, you know, at the end, somebody else might.
But she's not getting in, right? Not at all.
By all accounts, no, but I think, you know, lots can happen from now until then.
And as for Meg Whitman, you know, all the headlines are about, you know, did she vote, did she register, when, and all that stuff. I guess I'm sort of more interested in her promise to eliminate 40,000 jobs. How's she going to do that without getting rid of half of the prison guards?
That is her biggest challenge. You know, aside from the fact that she hasn't voted a whole lot, we haven't heard how she's going to eliminate anything. She's not debating. There's another debate next week. She's doing very limited media. No answers from Meg Whitman on a lot of the critical issues, and I think she's going to have to come up with them in the next couple of months.
Our current governor, though, made headlines this week, too, because, well, he's making some pretty interesting threats, and all of it seemed to have water as the backdrop for his moves.
The state legislature this year passed about 700 bills, Republicans and Democrats. Many of these bills aren't even that controversial. He threatened this week to terminate all of them, to veto just about all of them, I should say, unless he gets a big water deal. Now, as many people know, we're in the third year of a drought. The amount of water that can be pumped from the Delta, the main source of water for 2/3 of Californians, has been reduced, in part because of the drought, mostly because of the drought, frankly, but in part because of the Endangered Species Act with salmon and smelt and other fish. And Republicans have pushed hard for the president to drop the Endangered Species Act. There's provisions that he can do that under emergencies. Democrats have pushed back and said no. And what Arnold's pushing for, and the Republicans and the farmers, are $12 billion in new dams and also the so-called peripheral canal.
People are asking, talking about politics. Why is he pushing it, wanting to shoehorn this in, demanding that it happen in a couple of days? This affects millions of Californians and billions of dollars. What is the big rush to do it now?
The clock is ticking on him. His governorship is up in a year. Frankly, a lot of his legacy is in tatters. If you go back and look at what he ran on, he said he was going to blow up the boxes, eliminate the deficit spending, get the parties together. No, 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 no. He will be known as the Republican environmental governor. And I think he's really been shocked when he's gone down to Fresno and some of these places and seen the anger of Central Valley people against him.
San Francisco.
Well, they're angry for different reasons.
Too.
Well, you know, it's a legitimate debate, dams, and who pays for them, and things like that. But he is threatening to nullify the entire work of another branch of government.
Yeah, well, what's interesting about that actually is that he peeled back a little bit very recently. He basically said, okay, there's some bills I will sign. There are bills that would, if you sign them, free up billions of dollars in federal stimulus money for bridges and schools. Remember the whole thing about whether teacher evaluations could be based on student test scores. Obama said, I'm not giving you $4 billion in federal schools money unless you allow the evaluations to be guided by the test score. So there's a bill to do that. It's on his desk. He's not going to veto that.
I mean, the bottom line is, if they don't get it done, you know, what are we looking at in terms of worst case scenario when you're talking about the Delta, the levees?
Not much. No? I mean, I mean this from urban people.
Now?
No, 75% of America or of California's residents live within an hour of the coast. Nobody in the Bay Area, even though we're in the third year of a drought, is feeling any pain. There's no mandatory rationing in any Bay Area city. The people who are feeling pain are several farm districts that have junior water rights. Most farmers in the state are getting an okay amount of water, but a few are really getting hammered, just like in a bankruptcy where the last ones in get the least.
Well, the question that's before you, Paul, in your story, of course, is about the canals and the dam, and that was where the question was when I was a very young girl. So, but you know, thinking of another guy on the that has to do some pretty miraculous things to get ahead. Gavin Newsom may not be faring well in his race for governor, but he was in the headlines because of the Healthy San Francisco health care bill. The U.S. Supreme Court.
Sure.
Took
Well,
it up.
this San Francisco program, you know, the first of its kind, the one that is designed to insure all of our uninsured adults who don't qualify for Medi-Cal or Medicare. And so far, since 2007, I guess insure is the wrong word, but provide coverage in a network of clinics and hospitals. And so far, 45,000 of the 60,000 adults in just over 2 years have gotten coverage. The legal question is, can you make employers pay for it, pay part of it? And the way the city tries to do that is say that if you don't provide coverage for your employees at a certain level, you got to pay that same dollar amount to the city fund. They will then be eligible and will continue to subsidize the program. Problem is, there's a federal law. I mean, the legal problem is that there's a federal law that says that you can't, that states and local governments can't regulate employee health benefits. The overall question is this something that a city or a state should be able to do while we're debating national health care? Now, San Francisco's program in some ways is a model because there's these pay-or-play
programs. And a lot is hanging on this. I mean, President Obama has talked about this as a model, and certainly Newsom has hung most of his campaign for governor on healthy San Francisco. So what's at stake here as the Supreme Court looks at this? Could this should they decide against this, is this a huge blow to universal health care programs? I mean, how bad would it be?
Well, I think what's at stake is the ability of a local government, in this case, a city or perhaps a state, to regulate on its own, to cover its uninsured on its own. The employers are arguing that this is, preempted, not allowed by federal.
The restaurants.
Exactly. The Golden Gate Restaurant Association, but backed by major business groups all around the country, are arguing. And the Supreme Court this week asked the Obama administration to chime in, give us your view. I think that means, number one, that they are taking the case seriously, and number two, that it's a close question whether or not they're going to take it. The previous ruling has upheld the program, which means that it can go ahead, it can be a model for other places, and maybe if the eventual federal bill falls short, cities can go farther.
Is it unusual for the court to do this, to go back and ask the administration where it stands on an issue while it's debating it?
It doesn't happen in every case, but it happens often enough in important cases, and particularly in a law like this where it's a question of state power versus federal power.
But the big picture that's really fascinating, I think, is that if we get a federal health care bill, let's say that liberals don't like, that doesn't have a pure public option, and we may very well not because of the 60-vote issue. Let's say there's an opt-in to the public option or some quasi-public option or co-ops or something. Could cities be able, all around the country, frankly, liberal cities, to put in a stronger program than the federal government has? It seems like San Francisco, New York, and many others would do that.
If this program survives, I think that option will be on the table. I don't want to leave the Supreme Court without at least mentioning it's the first week of the term. Justice Sotomayor joined the court. The big issue overshadowing everything is campaign finance. This court could well lift all restrictions on corporate contributions and spending on national elections, and we could be looking at an entirely new, political scenario, financial scenario in a year because of a case before this court.
So we have lots at stake, and maybe Gavin Newsom has his political fortunes tied in with how this goes, and it may be the only thing that could pull him out. Well, I want to thank you, Carla, and Bob, and Paul. And Paul Rogers will join us again later to tell us about the search for water on the moon.